I'm Josie Brown, and this is Author Provocateur. My guest today is Marilyn Barron, whose 4-book Psychic Crystal Mystery series features a heroine who solves paranormal mysteries with wit, humor, and more than a little intuition. Marilyn has also written several standalone novels that combine romance, suspense, and historical intrigue in faraway places. She'll be joining me at the Barbara Vay Reader Appreciation Weekend this April, where she'll be showcasing her novel, The Siege. Thank you for joining me, Marilyn.
Thank you for having me.
I have to tell you, I'm very impressed with the Psychic Crystal Mystery series. It seems like it's a fun series. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, my husband and I were on a trip to Australia, and we were sitting across the aisle from each other, and I was sitting next to someone who purported to be a psychic, and then her PR person next to that. And this was in the time of SARS, and they were wearing these face masks. And I don't know if they had it or they didn't want to get it, but it was like a 20-hour trip. So I was sitting next to her, and I came up with the idea for the series. And so it started out in Sydney, Australia, then it went back to Florida.
Wow.
Where I'm from. So that's how I came up with that series.
Well, I think it's a great idea, and I know that there's currently 4 books in the series. I hope that the Vay authors, the Vay readers, will be picking it up. But I also know you'll be showcasing one of your more romantic suspense novels, The Siege.
Right. That just came out January 8th, and I'm real excited about that.
I bet. Apparently it takes place in one of my favorite cities, Florence, Italy.
Oh, that's one of your favorite cities?
Yes. Yeah, it looks like it might be one of yours too.
It is. I was in my senior year of college. I went to school there for 6 months, and I studied Italian and art history and mythology, and that's where I just developed a love of art. And so since then, most of my characters are artists, or they're talking about art theft or something to do with art. And so this sort of combines art and mythology, and it starts out in Florence, and then it goes to Greece.
Ah, you've covered 2 of the most, culturally rich societies in our world. I love that.
And yeah, it's an exciting story. And usually when I do historic romantic thrillers, I start out with a nugget of history, and I sort of develop that. I turn a nugget of history into a novel, and I build a story around it, preferably in a setting I'm familiar with. I did that in 3 of my books so far. So that seems to be, I write in a lot of genres, but I think one of my favorites is this romantic thriller, historical thriller. So it starts out in the current time, and then it goes back to usually World War II, because I'm fascinated by that time in history.
I know. It seems, doesn't World War II seem very current right now? I mean, I know that there's 2 movies right now up for Oscars that cover that period. And it seems like a very rich period that somehow, now that we're farther removed from it, we can look at it with a clearer eye and say, wow, there's so much that happened and it's so rich, and we can delve into it. Specifically, writers, I mean, I think that if I remember correctly, you've got a couple of books that do have some kind of World War II connection.
Right. I've got, actually, the first book that I ever got published was called Under the Moon Gate. And it starts out it takes place in current day, and then it goes back to World War II Bermuda. So it has a World War II theme. And then one of the favorite things I've ever written is called Stumblestones, and it takes place in Berlin, starts out in modern times, and it goes back to World War II, and it has 2 women's Holocaust stories. So it's not depressing. It's sort of like a Romancing the Stone type thriller. So every book that I have utilizes humor. So it's funny, but yet it's poignant. And now it seems like all my books start out and then go back to World War II. I think because my father was a top turret gunner in World War II in a B-17.
Wow.
And I read his sort of his diary of all the missions that he flew. And that's influenced me, and that's just the favorite period of time I like to write about and I like to read about.
It also seems that you've incorporated some of your own travels into your novels. Are there particular cities that have inspired you, like Florence, for this latest book?
Yeah, Florence especially. I've used that a number of times. Also, Bermuda. We've vacationed in Bermuda about 12 times. So that's why I wrote Under the Moon Gate. Um, and Stumblestones took place in Berlin, and I went to Berlin. Actually went to Berlin before I even thought about writing the book. But then when I came back, it was the book Stumblestones is about these Holocaust memorials that they have in front of people's houses where Holocaust victims were taken during the war, and now they're sort of memorialized brass plaques that go in front of their houses. So I was in Berlin for about a week, and I never saw one. I didn't even know what it was, but then one of my neighbors who moved to Germany told me about it, and I used that. I was inspired by that, and then he wrote the book. And I had been familiar with Berlin, but I had never seen it. Then when I went back, we took a river cruise last year, and I actually saw a stumblestone. There's about 60,000 of them all over Europe.
Wow.
So I saw one, and it's really exciting. So, and then the book that I'm working on now is called. It was inspired by a river cruise that I took last year to Dürnstein. Well, it's to Austria and to this little town called Dürnstein, Austria. And I took an excursion, and I met a saffron farmer. That was one of the excursions. You could either go to a winery or a saffron farm. So I chose that, and now I'm setting that in that little town, and it's about a saffron farmer. And it's called the Saffron Conspiracy.
See, you took the road least taken. Most
Right,
people go to the wineries.
Right. I'm not a big wine drinker. I mean, it's okay, but I'd rather do the saffron. And then I found this guy grows saffron, and he makes saffron products, and they're delicious. So I brought some home, and that inspired me to write the book. So every book that I've written has some reason why it was written. Some personal reason.
And starting all the way back with your father's diaries,
right?
Which to me is a wonderful way to reconnect, not only in knowing who he was as a young man, but now he's inspiring you as an adult.
Correct. Now he's since passed away, but I'll always remember that. So that's sort of like I said, my favorite time in history to read about. And like you say, there's so many movies and books, and there's so many stories that you could never run out of stories.
Right.
About World War II.
Right. And also the way you're blending it with something current today, and
correct.
The discovery of something that has not just the historic value, but the mystery and the suspense of what this item is and how it affects your hero and your heroine.
Right. That's exactly right.
I always love history with romantic suspense. We were in Berlin, as a matter of fact, last spring, and it was such a touching city for us. I mean, just the way it's embraced even the tragic part of its past. I mean, right. It was really touching.
I was impressed with that because I never wanted to go to Berlin. I just said, because I have a Jewish heritage, and I just said, why would I ever want to go there? And my husband's always wanted to go there, and I finally let him get his way. And we went there, and it was so wonderful. The people were so warm and welcoming, and they have so many memorials.
Right.
And it's just a beautiful city. So I was very surprised. I pleasantly surprised.
I was too. It was like a way to make amends. The whole city was out to make amends. Mm-hmm. And that to me means a lot. I mean, just having the cobblestones where the Berlin Wall goes right through the city.
Right, correct.
Oh my God.
I was so impressed with that. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
And, and like I said, and I make a lot of talks about my novel Stumblestones to different groups. And I never looked down. That's why I never saw them, because there were so many wonderful memorials that you could look up at.
Right.
But then when you actually look down on the pavement, that's when you see these, and it's the most, I think, touching memorial that they've done. But nobody knows about them. Nobody over here really knows much about them.
Right. I think there should be more said about the redemptive factor of the whole Berlin experience.
Yeah, they've done a great job, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited that I'm going to be meeting you at Barbara Vay's event. Have you ever attended?
No, this is going to be my first time, and I'm so excited because I've always wanted to go, and she asked me, and I was so thrilled, and I said, "You mean I'm going to be attending as a writer? Or do you want me to come as a reader?" And so she said, as an author. So I'm really thrilled.
Well, it's going to be you're going to have a great time. 500 very rabid readers who really are tuned into the authors, and they're going to love what you write. Want to hear more about the authors who will be attending the Barbara Vay Reader Appreciation Weekend? Just go to my website, authorprovocateur.com, and click onto the other interviews. You'll also find them on the event's Facebook page. And beneath each interview, feel free to leave a comment about your favorite part of it. Doing so puts you in the running for a bundle of the author's books. Listeners can leave one comment per author to be entered for the drawing. This is Josie Brown of Author Provocateur, signing off.